said it would be too complicated for me. I sat in my home office that evening with the laptop open, watching the live stream like some outsider tuning into a company I didn't build from scratch 30 years ago. The lighting in the conference room was harsh, fluorescent. The board members sat around the table in their suits, looking serious and professional. My son sat at the head. He wore the blue tie I'd given him last Christmas. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd founded Meridian Infrastructure Solutions in 1994 with nothing but a pickup truck, a Rolodex, and enough stubbornness to convince 3 municipalities that I could coordinate their logistics better than anyone else. 30 years later, we had offices in 8 states, 200 employees, and contracts worth $40 million annually. And now my son, my only child, was telling me a board meeting would be too complicated for me to understand. I should have seen it coming. The signs had been there for months. The polite deflections, the calendar invites that somehow never reached my inbox, the way conversation stopped when I walked into rooms. But I'm 56 years old and apparently slow on the uptake. The meeting started at 7 p.m. I had a scotch in my hand and my feet up on the desk. My wife was at her book club. The house was quiet except for the laptop speakers. "Good evening, everyone," my son said. His name is David. He's 32. "Thank you for making time for this important discussion." Important discussion. That was new phrasing. "As you know," David continued, "we're at a critical juncture. The Riverside contract is moving forward, and we have preliminary interest from the State Transportation Authority. This is the kind of growth that will define the next decade of Meridian." I took a sip of scotch. So far, nothing surprising. We'd been positioning for the Riverside contract for 2 years. I'd personally cultivated the relationship with their city manager. "However," David said, and I heard the shift in his tone, "we need to address some structural concerns that have come up in recent conversations with potential partners and investors." Structural concerns. I set my glass down. "Specifically," David said, "there's been feedback about our leadership profile and how it aligns with modern expectations for infrastructure firms operating at our scale." One of the board members, Patricia Hendricks, who'd been with us for 6 years, nodded seriously. Another board member, James Liu, was taking notes. "The concern," David continued, and here he paused, looked directly at the camera as if he knew I was watching, "centers on legacy risk." Legacy risk. My name is Tom Brennan. I built this company, and my son just called me a legacy risk on a live stream that our entire staff could access. "Now, to be clear," David said, holding up one hand in a gesture that was probably meant to look diplomatic, "this isn't about capability or contribution. My father built something remarkable. Nobody disputes that." My father. Not Tom, not our founder. My father. Like I was some retired figurehead who'd been put out to pasture and just didn't know it yet. "But the reality," David said, "is that infrastructure consulting has evolved significantly. The tools, the compliance frameworks, the stakeholder management approaches, these aren't the same industry my father entered 30 years ago. And when potential partners look at our leadership structure, they see someone whose primary experience base is rooted in a very different era." I sat forward in my chair. The scotch had gone warm in my hand. Patricia Hendricks spoke up. "David, I think we all understand the sensitivity here. Tom's contribution is foundational, but I also think we have a fiduciary responsibility to position the company for maximum competitive advantage." Fiduciary responsibility. These were words I'd taught her when she joined the board. "Exactly," David said, "which is why I'm proposing we formalize a transition that's already happening organically. We restructure Tom's role from chief executive to founder emeritus. He retains his equity stake, of course. He remains on the board in an advisory capacity, but operational authority transfers fully to the executive team, founder emeritus. This allows us to honor Tom's legacy while also presenting a leadership profile that aligns with where the industry is today," David continued. "It's a win-win." A win-win. My son had just erased me from my own company and called it a win-win. James Liu spoke next. "What's the timeline on this?" "I'd like to move forward immediately," David said. "The Riverside decision is coming in the next 45 days. I want us positioned optimally when that happens." "Does Tom know about this proposal?" Patricia asked. There was a pause. David shifted in his seat. "We've had preliminary conversations. He understands the direction we're heading." That was a lie. We'd had exactly one conversation 3 weeks ago, where David suggested I might want to step back a bit and enjoy life more. I'd told him I'd think about it. Apparently thinking about it wasn't part of his timeline. "I moved to vote on the restructuring," James Liu said. Second, Patricia added. All in favor? David asked. 5 hands went up. David's, Patricia's, James's. 2 others, board members I'd personally recruited 4 years ago. Motion carries, David said. He looked at the camera again. This isn't a hostile action. This is about positioning Meridian for the future, and I know my father, more than anyone, wants to see this company thrive. The screen went dark. The meeting was over. I sat in my office for 20 minutes without moving. The scotch stayed in my hand, untouched. Outside, I could hear the neighbor's dog barking. A car drove past. Normal sounds from a normal evening in a normal life. Except nothing was normal anymore. They hadn't fired me. That would have been too obvious, too actionable. Instead, they'd redefined me. Taken my title, my authority, my identity within the company I'd built, and replaced it with a ceremonial position that sounded respectful but meant nothing, founder Emeritus. I looked around my home office. The walls were covered with photos from job sites, ribbons from groundbreakings, awards from industry associations, 30 years of work, 30 years of relationships, 30 years of waking up at 5 a.m. and working until midnight, because that's what it took to build something real. And my son had just made me a symbolic entity. I heard the front door open. My wife's voice called out, "Tom, you still up?" "In here," I said. She appeared in the doorway, holding her book club tote bag. "How was your evening? Anything interesting happen?" I looked at her. Helen. We'd been married 34 years. She'd been there when I was installing phone systems in municipal buildings for $12 an hour. She'd been there when I mortgaged our house to buy my first truck. She'd been there through every risk, every setback, every small victory that built into something bigger. "Nothing interesting," I said. "How was book club?" "Oh, you know, Sandra hated the ending. Deborah loved it. Same as always." She kissed the top of my head and went to get ready for bed. I sat in my office until midnight, staring at the dark laptop screen. Then I got up, walked to the filing cabinet in the corner, and pulled out a folder I hadn't looked at in 5 years. It contained the original articles of incorporation for Meridian Infrastructure Solutions, the original operating agreement, the original shareholder structure. I read through every page, then I started making a list. By 2 a.m., I had 17 items written down, people I needed to talk to, documents I needed to find, details I needed to verify. My son thought I was too old to understand complicated things. He was about to find out just how complicated I could make his life. As the story unfolds, hit the hype button, like, subscribe, and write in the comments. Would you forgive them or walk away? I went into the office the next morning like nothing had happened. The Meridian building was a 3-story brick structure in the industrial park off Route 29. We'd bought it 12 years ago when we outgrew the strip mall space where we started. I still remembered negotiating the price down by $40,000 because the previous owner was desperate to sell before his divorce finalized. I parked in my usual spot, third from the door, under the oak tree. As I walked toward the entrance, I noticed things I'd been too busy to see before, the way the receptionist's smile flickered when she saw me, the way she glanced at her phone before greeting me. "Morning, Mr. Brennan," she said. Her name was Emily, 23 years old. She'd been with us for 2 years. "Morning, Emily." I walked past her desk toward the elevator. Behind me, I heard her phone buzz, then the quiet sound of her typing. The elevator took me to the 3rd floor. Executive offices. My office was at the end of the hall. David's was 3 doors down. I'd been coming to this building for 12 years. I knew every squeak in the floorboards, every stain on the carpet, every loose fixture in the bathroom. This was my space, except now it felt like I was visiting. I reached my office and tried the door handle. Locked. That was new. I pulled out my key card and swiped it. The red light blinked. Access denied. I stood there for 10 seconds, staring at that red light. Then I walked down the hall to David's office. His door was open. He was sitting at his desk, typing on his laptop. He looked up when I walked in. "Dad," he said, "didn't expect you this early." "My keycard doesn't work," I said. "Oh." He glanced at his computer screen. "Yeah, we did a security update last night. New access protocols. I'll have IT reset your credentials." "Security update," I repeated. "Standard stuff. Compliance requirement for the Riverside contract." I walked further into his office and sat down in the chair across from his desk. David watched me but didn't say anything. "Interesting meeting last night," I said. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I was going to talk to you about that this morning." "Were you?" "Dad, listen." "Founder Emeritus," I said. "That's creative. Who came up with that term?" He leaned back in his chair. "It's not a demotion. You're still on the board. You still have your equity. Nothing changes financially. Just operationally. Yes. And you didn't think that was worth discussing with me before you put it to a vote? We did discuss it 3 weeks ago. I told you we needed to talk about leadership transitions. You suggested I might want to step back. I told you I'd think about it. That's not the same as agreeing to be erased. You're not being erased. I looked at him. My son. He had my eyes, Helen's cheekbones, and apparently none of my instinct for when he was being lied to. Who put you up to this? I asked. Nobody put me up to anything. This is the right move for the company. Is it? Yes. Dad, I know this is hard, but you have to understand the industry is different now. The way we pitch to clients, the way we manage stakeholder relationships, the regulatory environment, it's all changed. And when clients look at our website and see your photo and your title, they see someone from a different era. A different era, I said. I signed the Riverside Preliminary Agreement. I've been working with their city manager for 2 years. And that's appreciated. But going forward, it makes more sense for me to be the primary contact. Because I'm too old. Because you're from a different generation, and that affects how we're perceived. I stood up. This is fascinating, David. Truly. You've managed to frame pushing your father out of his own company as a favor to me. It's not. I'll be in touch, I said, and walked out. Behind me, I heard him call my name, but I kept walking. I took the elevator down to the second floor. Operations. This was where the project managers sat, where the coordinators handled scheduling and logistics. I'd spent most of my career on this floor before we grew large enough to justify an executive level. I walked past the cubicles, people looked up, then quickly looked away. Nobody made eye contact, except one person. His name was Ray Mitchell. He'd been with Meridian for 16 years, since he was 26. He was one of our senior project managers. We'd worked together on the Hamilton Transit Project, the Westfield Municipal Complex, and a dozen other jobs. Ray stood up as I approached his cubicle. Tom? He said quietly. Got a minute? I followed him to the break room. It was empty. Ray closed the door behind us. I heard about the board vote, he said. News travels fast. There was an all-staff email this morning announcing the leadership transition. Of course there was. How are you holding up? Ray asked. I'm processing, I said. What did the email say? That you're transitioning to an advisory role to focus on strategic vision, that David is assuming full operational control, standard corporate language, but everyone knows what it means. What does it mean? Ray hesitated. It means they're pushing you out. I nodded. That's what I thought. For what it's worth, Ray said, most of the people who've been here longer than 5 years think it's bullshit. You built this company. Without you, none of us would have jobs. I appreciate that. But there's something else you should know. I waited. This didn't start last night, Ray said. This has been in motion for months, maybe longer. What do you mean? I've seen things, heard things, little comments in meetings, changes to reporting structures that didn't make sense at the time but make sense now, your access getting quietly downgraded, your calendar getting cleared without explanation. My calendar? You didn't notice? The last 3 client meetings you were supposed to attend got rescheduled without you. I thought it was odd, but I figured you'd authorized it. I hadn't authorized anything. Who's driving this? I asked. Is it David? Ray glanced at the break room door, then back at me. I don't think he's smart enough to orchestrate this alone. Then who? His wife, Ray said. Amanda. Amanda. David's wife of 4 years. She was 30, worked in marketing, and had opinions about everything. I'd never warmed to her, but I'd assumed that was just standard father-in-law instinct. Amanda doesn't work here, I said. No, but she's in David's ear constantly. And she's friendly with Patricia Hendricks. They do yoga together or something. And Patricia's been pushing for organizational restructuring for the last year. I thought back to the board meeting. Patricia had been quick to support David's proposal. Fiduciary responsibility. Maximum competitive advantage. Those were her phrases, not David's. Why would Amanda care about pushing me out? I asked. Ray looked uncomfortable. Tom, I don't know if I should... Tell me. Okay, this is just what I've heard, all right? Office gossip. But apparently Amanda thinks you're a liability. That you're old-fashioned, that you don't understand modern business, that you're holding David back. Holding him back. That's the word she uses. She's been saying it at company events. At the holiday party last year, I heard her tell someone that David would be running a Fortune 500 company if he didn't have to worry about protecting your feelings. I processed that information. My daughter-in-law, who I'd welcomed into the family, who I'd given a job to in our marketing department before she quit to freelance, was going around telling people I was holding my son back. "And David knows she's saying this?" I asked. "I think he agrees with her." I looked at Ray. "What else?" "There's a rumor they're planning to take the company public. Not immediately, but within the next 2 years. And they need a clean leadership narrative for that. Founders stepping aside, new generation taking over. It's a better story for investors." "Taking the company public." "That's the rumor." I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just about David wanting control. This was about repositioning Meridian for a sale, making it attractive to investors. And the story they wanted to tell didn't include a 56-year-old founder who still showed up to job sites. "Thanks for telling me," I said. Ray nodded. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to think about it." I left the break room and walked back to the elevator. As I passed the cubicles, I noticed people watching me. Some looked sympathetic, some looked away. One person, a younger coordinator I didn't know well, smirked. I rode the elevator back up to the 3rd floor. My office was still locked. David's door was closed now. I stood in the hallway for a moment, looking at my own office door. The nameplate still said, "Thomas Brennan, Chief Executive Officer." They hadn't even bothered to change it yet. I took out my phone and called Helen. "Hey," she answered. "What's up? Can you meet me for lunch?" "Sure. Everything okay?" "We need to talk." There was a pause. "Tom, what happened?" "I'll explain at lunch." "Russo's at noon?" "I'll be there." I hung up and walked back to the elevator. As I passed David's office, I heard voices inside, David and someone else. A woman's voice. Amanda. I kept walking. The lawsuit was filed on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, it was all anyone at Meridian could talk about. I didn't go to the office. Paul advised me to stay away to avoid any confrontations that could be used against me in court, so I sat at home and waited for the fallout. The first call came from Ray Mitchell. "Tom, people are losing their minds here. David held an emergency staff meeting. He told everyone you're trying to sabotage the company." "That's not what I'm doing." "I know, but that's the narrative they're pushing." Amanda sent an email to all the clients saying there's internal administrative matters being resolved, but that operations won't be affected. "Did she mention me by name?" "No, but everyone knows what it's about." "Good." Ray was quiet for a moment. "Tom, are you sure about this?" "I'm sure." "Okay, just be careful. David's not acting like himself. He's angry, more than I've ever seen him. He'll get over it." "Will he?" I didn't have an answer for that. The second call came from Patricia Hendricks. "Tom, what the hell are you doing?" "Protecting my interests. You're destroying the company." "I'm enforcing the shareholder agreement." "That clause doesn't apply to operational restructuring, and you know it." "Then you should have no problem defending it in court." "This is vindictive. This is you punishing David because he hurt your feelings." "This is me holding people accountable for violating corporate governance." She hung up on me. The third call came from Helen's sister, Diane. "Tom, Helen is a wreck. She called me crying." "What's going on?" "It's complicated. She says you're suing David." "I'm suing the company." "That's the same thing to her." "Tom, you need to think about what this is doing to your family." "I am thinking about it." "No, you're not. You're thinking about yourself, about your pride, but you're tearing Helen apart." I hung up and turned off my phone. For the next 3 days, I avoided everyone. I stayed home, I worked in my office, I compiled more documentation for Paul. On Friday morning, Paul called. "We got their response. They're not settling, they're fighting it." "Good. Tom, this means discovery, depositions, a trial. This could take a year or more." "I don't care." "Their attorney is claiming you're engaged in bad faith litigation, that you're trying to damage the company's reputation to force a settlement." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Because part of their defense is going to be that you've been difficult to work with for years, that you've resisted modernization, that the board had no choice but to restructure around you. None of that is true. Doesn't matter. They're going to argue it anyway, and they're going to call witnesses. Employees who'll testify about conflicts you've had, board members who'll say you were resistant to change, clients who'll say they preferred working with David. They can't do that." "Yes, they can. That's how litigation works. They're going to paint you as an aging founder who couldn't let go, and some of it will stick." I sat down in my desk chair. "So what do I do?" "We fight back. We build our case. We show that you were illegally removed without proper consent. But Tom, you need to be prepared for this to get uglier than you think." "I'm prepared." "Are you prepared for Helen to leave you?" That stopped me. What? She called me yesterday. Asked me if there was a way to resolve this without trial. She's terrified this is going to destroy your marriage. Helen called you? She's scared, Tom, and she has every right to be. You're betting everything on a legal case that's far from certain. If you lose your company, your money, your family, and your reputation. And if I win? If you win, you get back a job you'll hate, in a company full of people who resent you while your son never speaks to you again. I didn't respond. Think about it, Paul said, and hung up. I sat in my office for an hour. Then I walked downstairs. Helen was in the kitchen, making coffee. She didn't look at me when I walked in. Helen, I don't want to talk about it. We have to talk about it. Why? So you can tell me again how you're right and everyone else is wrong? I'm not saying that. Then what are you saying? I sat down at the kitchen table. I know this is hard on you. Hard? Tom, my sister won't stop calling me. Our friends don't know what to say. I can't go to the grocery store without people staring at me, and you're acting like this is just another business transaction. It's not just business. It's my life's work. And I'm your wife. Doesn't that count for something? Of course it does. Then drop the lawsuit, walk away, be the bigger person. I can't. She set down her coffee cup. Why not? Because if I walk away, they win, and I can't let them win. This isn't about winning. This is about pride. No, this is about not letting my son steal from me. He's your son, Tom. No matter what happens with the company, he's still your son, and you're destroying that relationship over money and ego. This isn't about ego. Yes, it is, and it's going to cost you everything. She walked out of the kitchen. I heard her footsteps going up the stairs. Then I heard the bedroom door close. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty coffee cup she'd left behind. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was about pride. But pride was all I had left. That evening, I drove to the storage facility where we kept old company records. It was a climate-controlled unit about 10 miles from the office. We'd been renting it for years, back when we didn't have room for archives at the main building. I had a key. David probably didn't even know about this place. It predated his involvement in the company by a decade. I unlocked the unit and turned on the lights. Rows of filing cabinets and cardboard boxes, decades of paperwork, contracts, invoices, correspondence, memos. I started searching through the boxes labeled 1994-2000, the early years, the years when it was just me, a truck, and a dream. After 2 hours, I found what I was looking for. A folder labeled Original Asset Documentation. Inside were the contracts for the company's first major purchases. The truck, the office equipment, the initial lease agreement for our first office space. All of it purchased with my personal credit. All of it in my name. And according to the paperwork, none of it had ever been formally transferred to corporate ownership, which meant technically I still personally owned assets that Meridian had been using for years. It wasn't much, maybe $50,000 worth of equipment and vehicles, most of it depreciated, but it was leverage. I made copies of everything and put the originals back in the storage unit. Then I drove home and emailed the documents to Paul. Subject line, additional evidence. Personal assets used by company without formal transfer. Paul called me 20 minutes later. Tom, this is brilliant. If you still personally own these assets, you can claim them back. You can force the company to negotiate. How much leverage does this give us? Enough to make them nervous. If you claim these assets back, it disrupts operations. They'll have to replace equipment, renegotiate leases. It's a hassle they don't want. So we use it as a bargaining chip? Exactly. I'll send their attorney a notice that you're exercising your right to reclaim personal property. See how they respond. Do it. We hung up and I sat in my office, feeling something close to satisfaction for the first time in weeks. David thought he could outmaneuver me. He thought I was too old, too out of touch, too easy to push aside. He was about to learn otherwise. The notice about the personal assets hit David like a bomb. Paul sent it on Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, David was calling my phone nonstop. I let it go to voicemail. First message, Dad, what the hell is this? You can't just claim company assets as personal property. That's insane. Second message, you're sabotaging the company now? You're actually trying to shut down operations? This is beyond petty. Third message, fine. Don't answer. But you should know, you just made this whole thing worse. Whatever chance we had at resolving this quietly is gone now. I deleted all 3 messages. Tuesday morning, Paul called. Their attorney wants to meet. They're willing to discuss settlement. Good. Tom, you need to think carefully about what you want here. because once we start settlement negotiations, we have to be realistic. I want operational control restored. That's not realistic. Why not? Because David has the board's support. Even if you win the lawsuit, the board can just restructure again after the case is over. You can't force them to work with you if they don't want to. So, what's realistic? A buyout. They purchase your shares at fair market value, plus a premium for the disruption. You walk away with your money and your dignity. I don't want money. I want my company. Tom, the company is gone. Whether you accept that now or in 6 months after a trial, the result is the same. David is in control. The board supports him. Your best option is to negotiate the best exit you can get. And if I refuse, then we go to trial, and you roll the dice. But I'm telling you, as your attorney and as someone who's seen this before, you're not going to get what you want. Even if you win the legal case, you lose the practical war. I hung up and threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and cracked. Helen appeared in the doorway. What happened? Paul wants me to settle. Maybe you should. I'm not giving up. Tom, you've made your point. You've shown David you're not going to be pushed around quietly. Now take the money and move on. This isn't about money. Then what is it about? It's about not letting him win. He's already won. Can't you see that? He has the company, he has the board, he has the clients. All you have is a legal case that might win you nothing. When does this end? When I get what's mine. She shook her head. You're going to lose everything, and for what? So you can say you didn't quit? Yes. She walked out. I sat in my office, staring at the cracked phone. Then I picked up the landline and called Ray Mitchell. Tom? Jesus, are you okay? Everyone's talking about the asset claim. I'm fine. I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to pull the client files for every contract signed in the last 10 years. Specifically, I need you to identify which contracts were won because of my personal relationships with the clients. Tom, I don't know if I should... Ray, I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. I'm asking you to compile information that's already in the system. Can you do that? He was quiet for a moment. Yeah, I can do that. Send it to my personal email, not my work email. Okay. But Tom, you should know. David's been asking people if anyone's been in contact with you. He thinks you're trying to build a case to poach clients. I'm not poaching anyone. Just be careful. We hung up. 2 days later, Ray sent me a spreadsheet with 23 contracts highlighted. 23 contracts worth a combined $18 million, all won primarily because of my relationships with the decision makers. I forwarded the spreadsheet to Paul. Additional leverage. These clients came to Meridian because of me. If I'm not with the company, they might reconsider their contracts. Paul called immediately. Tom, you can't threaten to interfere with existing contracts. That could be considered tortious interference. I'm not threatening anything. I'm just pointing out that David's decision to remove me might have business consequences. That's a very fine line. Then don't cross it, but make sure their attorney knows about this list. Paul was quiet. You're playing hardball. They started it. The settlement meeting was scheduled for Friday at Paul's office. David, Amanda, Patricia Hendricks, and their attorney showed up at 2 p.m. I was already there, sitting in the conference room with Paul. David walked in first. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Amanda was behind him, her expression cold. Patricia looked uncomfortable. Their attorney, a woman named Grace Keller, sat down and opened her briefcase. Let's get straight to business. My clients are willing to make an offer to resolve this matter. I'm listening, Paul said. We'll purchase Mr. Brennan's shares at fair market value, plus a 20% premium. That comes to approximately $12 million. In exchange, Mr. Brennan drops the lawsuit and signs a non-disparagement agreement. Paul looked at me. I shook my head. My client isn't interested in a buyout, Paul said. Grace frowned. Then what does he want? Restoration of his operational authority. David laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. That's not happening. Then we don't have a deal, Paul said. Wait, Grace said. Let's be reasonable here. Mr. Brennan, you've had a remarkable career. You built something significant, but the company has evolved beyond its original structure. The board has a fiduciary duty to make decisions in the best interest of all shareholders, not just one individual. Even when that individual owns 48%? I asked. Even then, corporate governance isn't a dictatorship. It's a collective responsibility. Collective responsibility, I repeated. Is that what you call a coup? David stood up. This is pointless. He's not interested in being reasonable. Sit down, David, Grace said. No, we've made our offer. If he doesn't want it, we'll see him in court. Amanda grabbed David's arm. David, wait. For what? So he can waste more of our time? He walked out. Amanda hesitated, then followed him. Patricia and Grace stayed. Grace closed her briefcase. Mr. Dern, your client needs to understand that this is a very generous offer. If we go to trial, there's no guarantee he'll win. And even if he does, the company will be in shambles by then. Everyone loses. Then maybe you should convince your clients to accept my client's terms, Paul said. Grace stood up. I'll see you in court. She and Patricia left. Paul looked at me. That went about as well as expected. They're scared. Maybe, but they're also committed to fighting this, and they have more resources than you do. I have truth on my side. Truth is great, but it doesn't pay legal bills. I left Paul's office and drove to a bar downtown. I hadn't been in a bar during the day in probably 20 years. But I needed to think, and I couldn't think at home with Helen's silence pressing down on me. I ordered a whiskey and sat in a corner booth. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Mr. Brennan, this is Jennifer Cross, Martin's wife. Martin asked me to reach out. He's concerned about you. He thinks you're making a mistake. If you want to talk, call me. I didn't call her. Instead, I sat in that bar for 2 hours, nursing one drink and thinking about what Paul had said. Even if I won, I'd lose. That was the calculus. That was the trap. David had positioned things so that my only options were bad options. Accept the buyout and walk away defeated, or fight and destroy everything in the process, unless there was a third option. I pulled out my phone and called Ray Mitchell. Ray, hypothetical question. If I wanted to contact the clients on that list you sent me, how would I do it? Tom, you can't. Hypothetically. Ray sighed. Most of them you know personally. You have their direct contact information. But if you approach them while you're in litigation with the company, David will claim you're interfering with business relationships. What if I'm not approaching them about business? What if I'm just talking to old friends? That's a gray area. Gray areas are my specialty. I hung up and opened my phone's contact list. 20 years of relationships, people I'd worked with, people who trusted me with their projects, people who knew me, not as Tom Brennan, the plaintiff, but as Tom Brennan, the person who got things done. I started making calls. Richard Polk was the first person I called, the retired municipal services director from Hamilton County. We'd worked together on 3 major projects over a decade. Tom, he answered, I heard about your situation. That's rough. It is. Listen, I'm not calling about business. I'm calling as a friend. Can we meet for coffee? Sure. When? Tomorrow morning? We met at the same place I'd met Martin Cross weeks earlier. Richard showed up in jeans and a windbreaker, looking relaxed in retirement. So, he said as he sat down with his coffee, how bad is it? Bad. David orchestrated a board vote to remove me from operations. I'm suing to reverse it. They're trying to buy me out. I'm refusing. It's a mess. Richard nodded slowly. And you're calling me because I need perspective from someone who knows me, someone who's worked with me, someone who can tell me if I'm crazy for fighting this. Are you asking if you're right to fight or if you can win? Both. Richard took a sip of coffee. Okay, honest answer? You're right to be angry. What David did was cold. But whether you can win depends on what winning looks like. If winning means getting your old job back and running the company the way you used to, you're not going to win. Too much has changed. The board doesn't want you in operations. The clients are used to working with David now. Even if you legally force your way back in, you'll be fighting every day. So you think I should give up? I think you should redefine winning. Maybe winning isn't about getting your job back. Maybe it's about protecting your legacy, making sure people remember what you built. And how do I do that if they're erasing me? They can't erase you. You're in every contract, every project, every relationship this company has built for 30 years. That doesn't go away just because David takes your title. I stared at my coffee. That's not enough. Then you're fighting for pride, not principles. Maybe pride is a principle. Richard smiled. Fair enough. But let me ask you something. If you keep fighting and you destroy the company in the process, was it worth it? The company isn't going to be destroyed. Are you sure? Because litigation scares clients. Uncertainty scares investors. If this drags on for a year, Meridian's going to lose opportunities. People are going to leave. The value is going to drop. And when it's over, everyone loses. I didn't have a response to that. Richard finished his coffee. Tom, I like you. I respect you, but you're in a no-win situation. The best thing you can do is take the buyout, negotiate for some kind of legacy recognition, and move on. Start something new. Consult independently. You have relationships all over the industry. You don't need Meridian. Meridian is mine. No, it was yours. Now it's theirs. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can figure out what comes next. He left. I sat in the coffee shop for another hour. Then I called the second person on my list. Laura Hendricks, the city manager for Westfield. We'd worked together on the municipal complex 6 years ago. Tom Brennan, she said when she answered. I haven't heard from you in ages. I know. I've been dealing with some internal issues at Meridian, but I wanted to touch base, see how things are going with the complex. Everything's fine. David's team has been great. David's team, not my team? There was a pause. Tom, I heard about the lawsuit. I don't want to get pulled into that. You're not. I'm just calling as a colleague. Okay, but David called me last week. He wanted to make sure I knew that Meridian's operations weren't affected by the internal restructuring. He was pretty clear that you're not involved in day-to-day client relations anymore. Did he say why? He said you're transitioning to an advisory role, that it's a natural evolution. And you believed that? I don't know what to believe. Tom, you're putting me in an awkward position. I'm not trying to. I just wanted you to know that if there are any issues with the Westfield contract, I'm still available. The contract is fine, and if there are issues, I'll work with David. She hung up. I tried 3 more calls. Same result. Polite but distant. Nobody wanted to get involved. Nobody wanted to risk their relationship with Meridian by siding with me. By the end of the day, I'd called 8 people and gotten nowhere. I drove home feeling like I'd wasted my time. Helen was in the kitchen making dinner. She didn't ask about my day. We ate in silence. Then she went upstairs and I went to my office. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Ray. Tom, you need to see this. He'd attached a link to a local business news site. The headline read, Meridian Infrastructure Solutions founder files lawsuit against company, claims wrongful removal. The article was 3 paragraphs summarizing the case. It didn't name David, but it mentioned internal governance disputes and allegations of breach of fiduciary duty. At the bottom of the article were comments. Dozens of them. Sounds like a founder who can't let go. This happens with family businesses all the time. The old generation doesn't know when to step aside. I worked with Meridian last year. The son was way more professional than the father. I closed the browser and put the phone down. David had won the narrative war before I'd even realized we were fighting one. The next morning, Paul called. Tom, we have a problem. Their attorney filed a motion for sanctions, claiming you're engaging in witness tampering. What? I didn't tamper with anyone. You contacted clients. David's arguing that you're trying to interfere with business relationships to pressure the company. I was just talking to people I know. Legally, that's a gray area. Practically, it looks bad. The judge is going to see it as you trying to intimidate witnesses. So what do? We respond to the motion. We argue that you are engaging in protected speech, that you have a right to communicate with colleagues. But Tom, you need to stop contacting clients immediately. If you do it again, they'll use it as evidence of bad faith. Fine. I mean it. No more calls, no more meetings. You stay away from anyone connected to Meridian until this case is resolved. I said fine. He hung up. I sat in my office, staring at the walls. I'd tried playing by the rules, and it hadn't worked. I'd tried leveraging assets, and it hadn't worked. I'd tried reaching out to relationships, and it had backfired. I was out of options. Or was I? I opened my laptop and pulled up the company's client database. I still had access. They hadn't shut down my credentials completely. I scrolled through the list of active contracts. 23 major clients. $18 million in annual revenue. If I couldn't convince them to leave, maybe I could convince them to ask questions. I drafted an email. It was careful, professional, and didn't mention the lawsuit directly. Dear client name, I wanted to reach out personally to let you know about some changes happening at Meridian Infrastructure Solutions. As you may know, I'm transitioning to an advisory role after 30 years of building this company. While I'm confident in the team's capabilities, I wanted to ensure you have my direct contact information in case you have any questions or concerns about your project moving forward. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. Best regards, Tom Brennan. I sent it to all 23 clients. Within an hour, my phone started ringing. 3 clients wanted to know what was going on. 2 clients said they'd prefer to continue working with me directly. 1 client asked if Meridian was in financial trouble. By the end of the day, David's phone was ringing too. I knew because Ray texted me. David is losing his mind. Clients are asking questions. He thinks you're trying to sabotage contracts. I texted back, "I'm just keeping people informed." 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "David," I answered. "What the hell are you doing?" he shouted. "I'm communicating with clients. Isn't that what a founder does?" "You're undermining the company. I'm making sure clients know they can still reach me if they need to. You don't work here anymore. I'm still on the board. I'm still a shareholder. I still have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the company's interests." "By scaring clients?" "I'm not scaring anyone. I'm being transparent." "You're being vindictive." "No, David, I'm being strategic. There's a difference." He hung up. That night, Helen confronted me in the kitchen. "I got a call from Amanda today. She says you're trying to destroy the company." "I'm not." "Then what are you doing?" "I'm reminding David that I'm not powerless." "By jeopardizing client relationships?" "By exercising my rights as a founder and board member." "Tom, this has to stop. You're hurting people. You're hurting our family. You're hurting yourself." "I'll stop when they reinstate me." "They're never going to reinstate you. Can't you see that? You've burned every bridge. Even if you win the lawsuit, you lose, because nobody wants to work with you anymore." "That's not true." "It is true. David told Amanda you're impossible to work with, that you've been difficult for years, that the board voted unanimously to remove you because you were holding the company back." "And you believe that?" "I don't know what to believe anymore. All I know is that my husband has become someone I don't recognize." She left the kitchen. I heard her footsteps going upstairs. Then I heard the bedroom door close and lock. I stood in the kitchen, alone, and realized something. I'd already lost my family. The only thing left to fight for was everything else. The trial date was set for 3 months out. Paul warned me it would be expensive, exhausting, and uncertain. I told him to prepare anyway. In the meantime, I focused on building my case. Not just the legal case, the practical case. The evidence that I was essential to Meridian, that removing me was damaging, that the board had acted improperly. I went through every contract I'd signed in 30 years, every client meeting I'd attended, every project I'd supervised. I documented all of it. Paul kept telling me it wouldn't matter, that the legal question was narrow. Did the board violate the shareholder agreement? Everything else was just noise. But I didn't care about narrow legal questions. I cared about winning. 2 months before trial, something unexpected happened. Ray called me. "Tom, you need to get to the office. Now." "Why?" "There's a situation. David's in over his head. The Riverside contract is falling apart." "What happened?" "I can't explain over the phone. Just get here." I drove to the Meridian building. It was 10 p.m. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a few cars near the entrance. I walked in through the front door. Emily, the receptionist, wasn't at her desk. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. David's office door was open. He was inside with Amanda, Patricia Hendricks, and 2 people I didn't recognize. They were all standing around David's desk, looking at a laptop screen. I walked in. "What's going on?" David looked up. His face was pale. "Dad, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Patricia spoke. "The Riverside City Council rejected our proposal. They're going with a competitor." "Why?" "They said they had concerns about our leadership stability." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Leadership stability. "Someone told them about the lawsuit," Amanda said, glaring at me. "Someone made it sound like Meridian was in chaos, that we couldn't be trusted to deliver on a major contract." "I didn't tell anyone about the lawsuit." "Then who did?" David asked. Nobody answered. Patricia closed her laptop. "We need to figure out damage control. If Riverside pulls out publicly, other clients might reconsider their contracts too." "How much is the Riverside contract worth?" I asked. $12 million over 3 years, David said quietly. $12 million. One of the largest contracts in Meridian's history. The contract David had been positioning the company for over 2 years. "Can we appeal their decision?" I asked. "We can try," Patricia said, "but we'd need to address their concerns about stability, which means resolving the internal dispute." She looked at me when she said it. "You mean I need to drop the lawsuit?" I said. "It would help." "And if I don't?" "Then we lose Riverside, and probably other clients after that. The company's reputation takes a hit. Stock value drops. We might have to lay people off." I looked at David. "Is that true?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Yeah, it's true." I sat down in one of the chairs. "So this is leverage. You're saying if I don't drop the lawsuit, I'm responsible for destroying the company." "You're responsible either way," Amanda said. "You started this." "I started this?" "You orchestrated a board vote to erase me." "We restructured leadership. That's not the same thing. It is to Riverside. Patricia stood up. Tom, I understand you're angry. I understand you feel wronged, but you need to think about what's best for the company, not just what's best for you. I've been thinking about what's best for the company for 30 years. Then think about it now. Drop the lawsuit. Let David run operations. Protect the company you built. I looked around the room. David, Amanda, Patricia, all of them waiting for me to surrender. No, I said. Tom? No, I'm not dropping the lawsuit. If Riverside is concerned about stability, then David should address those concerns. Reinstate me to operational authority. Show clients that we're unified. That's not going to happen, David said. Then I guess you're going to lose Riverside. I stood up and walked toward the door. Dad, wait, David said. I stopped. Please, I'm asking you, as your son, drop the lawsuit. I turned around. You stopped being my son when you lied to me. I left the office and took the elevator down to the parking lot. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. A text from Ray. You still here? Just leaving. Hold on, I'm coming out. A minute later, Ray appeared. He looked around to make sure nobody was watching, then walked over to my car. Tom, there's something you need to know. What? The Riverside rejection wasn't random. Someone reached out to them. Someone told them about the lawsuit and made it sound worse than it is. Who? I don't know for sure, but I heard Amanda on the phone yesterday. She was talking to someone about managing client perceptions. And today Riverside pulls out. That's not a coincidence. I processed that. Amanda sabotaged the contract? I think she wanted to create leverage, force you to drop the lawsuit by making it look like your fight is damaging the company. That's insane. That's desperate. Tom, they're cornered. The lawsuit's going to cost them time and money. The negative publicity is hurting their growth plans. They need this to go away. So they're willing to sacrifice a $12 million contract to pressure me? I think they're betting you'll fold first. I got in my car. Thanks for the heads up. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. I drove home. Helen was already in bed. I went to my office and sat in the dark, thinking. If Amanda had sabotaged the Riverside contract to create leverage, that meant she was more involved in this fight than I'd realized. She wasn't just David's wife supporting him. She was an active player, and that changed things. I pulled out my phone and called Paul. Tom, it's almost midnight. I need to add something to the lawsuit. What? A claim against Amanda for tortious interference or whatever the legal term is. Wait, what happened? I explained about Riverside, about Ray's suspicions, about Amanda's phone call. Paul was quiet for a long time. Tom, unless you have hard evidence that Amanda contacted Riverside, we can't make that claim. It would be considered frivolous. So get evidence. How? Subpoena her phone records. We can't subpoena phone records without cause, and suspicion isn't cause. Then find another way. Tom, adding Amanda to the lawsuit would make this even messier. It would turn a corporate dispute into a family war. It's already a family war. Then you'll destroy what's left of your relationship with David. That relationship is already destroyed. Paul sighed. I'll look into it, but I'm not promising anything. We hung up. I sat in my office until 3 a.m., running through scenarios in my head. If Amanda was actively sabotaging contracts, she was a liability to the company. If I could prove it, I could use it as leverage, force David to remove her influence, maybe even force the board to reconsider the restructuring. But I needed proof, and the only way to get proof was to force Amanda to make a mistake. I spent the next week planning. Not a legal plan, Paul was handling that. A practical plan. A way to put pressure on Amanda until she made a mistake I could use. The first step was information. I needed to know what Amanda was doing, who she was talking to, what she was planning. I called Ray again. I need you to do something for me, and it's going to sound paranoid. What? I need you to pay attention to Amanda. When she's in the office, who she meets with, what she talks about. I think she's the one driving this whole thing, not David. Tom, I can't spy on her. I'm not asking you to spy. I'm asking you to observe. There's a difference. Ray was quiet. Why do you think Amanda's involved? Because this isn't David's style. David's direct. He confronts problems head on. This whole thing, the quiet restructuring, the narrative manipulation, the Riverside sabotage, that's not him. That's someone more subtle. You really think Amanda sabotaged Riverside? I think she created the conditions for Riverside to back out, and I think she's doing it to force me to drop the lawsuit. Okay, I'll pay attention. But Tom, if you're wrong about this, I'm not wrong. Over the next week, Ray sent me updates. Amanda had been in the office 3 times. She'd met with Patricia Hendricks twice. She'd had lunch with someone Ray didn't recognize. She'd spent an hour in David's office with the door closed. None of it was proof. But it was a pattern. On Thursday, Ray texted me. Amanda just left the building. She had a folder full of papers. Looked like contract files. Where was she going? Don't know. She got in her car and drove east. I made a decision. I got in my car and drove to the office. It was 3 p.m. Amanda's car was gone, but David's was still in the parking lot. I walked into the building. Emily looked up from the reception desk. Mr. Brennan, I need to pick something up from my old office. Your office is locked. I know. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. David's door was closed. I walked past it to my old office. The door was still locked, but I had a key. Not a key card. An actual physical key that predated the electronic lock system. I'd kept it as a backup years ago. I unlocked the door and went inside. My office had been cleaned out. My desk was empty. My files were gone. The photos on the walls had been removed. It was like I'd never existed. I walked to the filing cabinet in the corner. It was locked, but I had a key for that too. I opened it. Inside were files that hadn't been touched in years. Old contracts, old correspondence. And buried at the bottom of the 2nd drawer, a folder labeled Board Communications. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were printouts of emails between board members from the last year, discussions about leadership succession planning, mentions of Tom's declining engagement with modern practices, references to Amanda's concerns about operational efficiency. Amanda's concerns. I took photos of every page with my phone. Then I put the folder back and locked the cabinet. I left my office and walked back to the elevator. As I passed David's office, I heard voices inside. David and Amanda. Just need to wait it out, Amanda was saying. The trial is 3 weeks away. If we can keep clients calm until then, we'll be fine. And if Dad doesn't drop the lawsuit, David asked, then we make sure the trial goes our way. Grace said she has witnesses lined up, former employees who'll testify about Tom's management style, clients who'll say they prefer working with you. The narrative is solid. I don't know, Amanda. This feels wrong. Wrong? He's the one who sued us. He's the one who's putting the company at risk. All we're doing is defending ourselves. By destroying his reputation? By telling the truth. I walked away before I heard more. I drove home and sent the photos to Paul. Evidence of premeditation. They've been planning this for over a year. Amanda's been coordinating with board members to build a narrative against me. Paul called 10 minutes later. Tom, this is good. This shows they had a plan to remove you before they held the vote. It supports your claim that the restructuring was done in bad faith. Can we use it? Yes, but we need to authenticate it. How did you get these documents? From my office. Your locked office that you're not supposed to have access to? I still had a key. Paul sighed. Tom, that's a problem. If they find out you entered your office without permission and took photos of confidential board communications, they'll claim you're engaged in corporate espionage. I didn't take anything. I just photographed what was already there. That's still legally questionable, but I'll figure it out. In the meantime, do not go back to that office. Do not take any more documents. We work with what we have. Fine. That night, Helen finally spoke to me at dinner. David called today. He said you broke into the office. I didn't break in. I used my key. Tom, you can't do that. That's technically trespassing. It's my company. No, it's not. Not anymore. And the sooner you accept that, the better. I'll accept it when they pry it from my hands. She set down her fork. I'm leaving. I looked up. What? I'm leaving. I'm going to stay with Diane for a while, until this is over. Helen, I can't watch you destroy yourself anymore. I can't be part of this. You're part of me. Not this version of you. This version is someone I don't know. Someone who's so obsessed with winning that he's forgotten what he's fighting for. I'm fighting for what's mine. No, you're fighting because you're too proud to lose, and it's going to cost you everything. She stood up and walked out of the kitchen. 20 minutes later, I heard her car pull out of the driveway. I sat at the dinner table alone, staring at the empty chair across from me. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd lost perspective, but it was too late to stop now. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. Mr. Brennan, this is Caroline Reeves. I'm a reporter with the Business Chronicle. I'm doing a story on the lawsuit between you and Meridian. Would you be willing to comment? No comment. I understand this is a difficult time, but I think it's important for your side of the story to be heard. From what I've gathered, there's a narrative being pushed that you're a difficult founder who couldn't let go. Is that accurate? Who told you that? I spoke with several current employees. They painted a picture of a founder who resisted modernization and created friction with the executive team. That's not true. Then tell me what is true. I hesitated. Paul had told me not to talk to reporters. But if Amanda was controlling the narrative, maybe it was time to fight back. Off the record? I asked. For now. I built Meridian from nothing. I spent 30 years creating something real, and my son, influenced by his wife, orchestrated a board vote to erase me. They didn't fire me because they couldn't. I own too much equity, so they redefined me, made me a symbolic figurehead, and now they're trying to buy me out. Why didn't you accept the buyout? Because it's my company, and I'm not letting them steal it. Some would say you're being vindictive, that you're hurting the company by prolonging this fight. Some would be wrong. There are rumors that you've been contacting clients, trying to undermine contracts. I've been keeping clients informed. There's a difference. Is there? I hung up. The article came out 2 days later. The headline, Meridian Founders Lawsuit, Family Feud or Corporate Necessity. It was surprisingly balanced. It quoted me, David, and several anonymous employees, but the overall tone suggested that both sides had valid points, which meant neither side won. David called me after the article was published. Thanks for talking to the press. That really helped. You talked to them first? I had to manage the message. By making me look like a bitter old man who can't let go? By explaining the business rationale for the restructuring. There is no business rationale. This was personal. It wasn't personal. It was necessary. Keep telling yourself that. I hung up. 3 days before the trial, Paul called with news. Grace Keller reached out. They want to make one final settlement offer. I'm not interested. Tom, listen to the offer first. They're willing to go up to $15 million for your shares. They'll also agree to keep your name on the company in a founder emeritus capacity, with a formal recognition of your contributions. I don't want recognition. I want control. That's not on the table. Then we go to trial. Tom, there's something else. Grace said if you proceed with the trial, they're going to call Helen as a witness. What? They're going to ask her about your state of mind, about whether you've been irrational or difficult. They're going to use her testimony to paint you as someone who's lost perspective. Helen wouldn't do that. She might not have a choice. If they subpoena her, she has to testify. I sat down. They'd really do that? They're desperate, and desperate people do ugly things. So am I. What does that mean? It means I'm done playing nice. I hung up and made a decision. If they wanted to go to war, I'd give them a war.